Hello and welcome to Broadening Your Horizons. Today we're going to talk about spirituality. Now, I've just watched a video, actually I've watched it twice now, and it's a RSA, or Royal Society of Arts. They've made a presentation and a talk. It was a live event, and they recorded it and put it on YouTube. And it's called Beyond Belief: Taking Spirituality Seriously. And I was very intrigued by the whole talk, and thought it was important for me to do a video on this, talking about their ideas and kind of counterpoints that I feel as though wasn't addressed in that video itself and that talk. And to start with, that the talk had 4 speakers, one being Madeline Bunting, Robert Roland Smith, Elizabeth Oldfield, and Jonathan Rosen. And they all had their own takes. I think Elizabeth was more come from a Christian's perspective. Jonathan came from a more philosophical perspective, and Madeline came from a more analytical perspective. It seemed that was kind of what my opinion was. And first of all was Jonathan Rosen, and he kind of first and foremost, let's talk about the RSA first of all. The RSA, I feel, is quite a really good organisation in many respects, but in some respects they're not, because they don't take on kind of alternative or more outside of a box people. It has to be academics, and mainstream academics at that. They have had some great talks, and you can kind of compare them to TED Talks in some ways, but they're more intellectual based. They're not presentations in the way that TED Talks are small 15-minute talks. These are more half an hour talks, elongated and have more freedom than the TED Talks, in the respect that you have more time to get your point across. But you don't really have freedom in the respect that you have to be kind of this mainstream academic, and you kind of think you have to be part of the RSA to present there. But they do raise some interesting questions and raise some interesting points, and actually sometimes from the mainstream and the alternative agree on points. We all agree on certain points in life, and I think this is why I seriously want to look into what they are saying, because I agree actually with a lot of what they say, but I disagree with some points. I feel as though they've not addressed a couple of points. So Jonathan Rosen, he starts saying that people are spiritually illiterate, which I kind of agree. People don't seem to be spiritually active these days. They don't seem to be on a spiritual quest. I am, and I every day of my life try and go out there and connect with spirit or be more aware or conscious of spirit, and find out actually what spirit, or this concept of spirit actually is, because I may be connecting with it in ways that I'm not actually sure what it is. But the whole talk, they never actually talked about spirit. They just talked about spirituality, which was quite interesting. And also, the whole talk, they never talked about mind and body and the soul. They just talked about spirituality, and it seemed as though that there was this mindset, this point that they wanted to get across throughout the whole talk, and that was that. And I did agree with the point in one respect, that we're not taking spirituality seriously, in the respect that we are that we don't go through these rituals and practices of the spiritual kind of doctrines of the past, because we built up this huge past of going through this spiritual transition within our personal journey. And there are certain initiations and rituals and practices, such as yoga, meditation, and even religion plays a huge part in spirituality, because they all believe in this metaphysical or kind of deity in one respect. But we also believe in this personal journey of ourselves and of growth. But I come from, I enjoy martial arts, and that also has a spiritual side to it, in one way. And spirituality is meant to be there to help strengthen our inner lives. We all have our journey to partake in, and I feel as though that's the essence of spirituality. However, there has been this dichotomy where the debate between science and religion has really changed the way we look at our lives. And I feel as though it's healthy in one respect, but it's not in another, because you have many scientists being atheists, but then science only just kind of over the last few decades has actually been increasingly becoming more either agnostic or religious or spiritual, shall we say. And there is a differentiation between spiritual and religious. I'm spiritual, but I wouldn't say I'm religious. I don't go to, I'm not part of any religion, and however, I'm spiritual, meaning I'm trying to achieve a higher type of consciousness. But I don't believe that there's this one consciousness of self-being. And Jonathan talks about this ground sense of embodiment, that we believe that we are embodied in one way. However, we do have this disconnect, because we speak to ourselves, and we speak as ourselves as being in this body. We are embodied, and we're not the body. The body doesn't speak for ourselves. However, we're using this body as an instrument, and that is what spirituality kind of is to me. Is that there is this metaphysical part of our selves. However, Jonathan goes on to say that there's a disconnect with the world on which we're living, our aspect upon other people, our impact, upon other people, and environment, animals, and the positive and negative polarities of energy frequency. that needs to be balanced. Well, he didn't say that, but I've wrote that down, taken I've looked at what he said and taken it in my own interpretation, that he's saying that we have these two polarities that need to be balanced in a way, but we need to harness and keep these two ways. So say science and religion, and kind of harness them and use their potentials as individual rights. And there needs to be a connection between our personality and our ego and the senses that control our reality. And that is what I feel spirituality is that connection with the various aspects of ourselves. Next on was Madeline Bunting, and she focused on the title, Beyond Belief, and she made a very good point that we can never really ever go beyond belief, because we're all entrenched in belief itself. Because in one way or another, we are acting, reacting, and operating within and out of belief within itself. However, what I didn't understand about Madeline is when she then goes on to say she doesn't like the word spirituality. Now I'm a bit intrigued to this, why Madeline doesn't like the word spirituality. The word spirituality and our perception of a meaning as to whether there is a part of ourselves that extends beyond our physical self. Spirituality has become associated with personal growth. I think that spirituality is in its very essence a growth of the individual being. I think what Jonathan was pointing out to earlier and what Madeline talked about was that we're not partaking in choosing spirituality. And in one way you can get a debate whether you choose to be spiritual or whether we're just innately spiritual. But we certainly have various levels of spirituality. There are people who are extremely spiritual. They're on a certain quest to achieve that. And they do that by partaking in these religions or rituals and practices. However, she also said that it's important to understand the language that we use about spirituality. She says it's the most important thing. And Jonathan, in his speech, he first said that he quoted Gandhi, and Gandhi said, "Be the change you want to see in the world." Now, they made a joke in the thing that that's not actually his real quote. His quote was a more elongated version, and that this "be the change you want to see in the world" is a bumper sticker version. However, what is quite interesting is that spirituality has become or is too self-absorbent, and you don't really worry about the world around you, just worry about your own personal journey. I think that's true in some ways, is that people are too involved with their own ego and their own self, and a lot of spirituality is actually disconnecting with that self. And I felt as though Madeline actually associated spirituality with being too involved with themselves. So I think it was actually the opposite. She was contradicting what actually spirituality is that spirituality is disconnecting, whereas she was saying that it's connecting with this self-obsessive self-journey.